Hello, everybody, and welcome to Leadership 101. I'm Jeff Moss, and today I'm very proud to introduce to you Dan Whalen. Dan has an incredible story, and in the interest of time, I'm not going to spend a lot of time introducing him. We're just going to get right into it. But Dan, tell everybody where you're from and kind of walk us through the process that got you to where you are today.
Well, I appreciate you having me, Jeff, and that's a bit of a long-winded answer, so I'll try to keep it as high level as I can. But I grew up in Boston, about 45 minutes outside of Boston. Big hockey guy. That was my sport growing up. We had a pond in our backyard, so I was on skates at 4 or 5 years old. And when I was growing up, I was always very much a very shy kid. Didn't have a whole lot of confidence or self-esteem or anything like that. But hockey was one area that I felt that sense of confidence. And really what I was pulled towards was not so much, I do love the sport, but the leadership component. So I was actually often captain of my team growing up playing hockey. I did not speak a whole lot back then, surprisingly, based on knowing me. Learned how to talk a little.
I'm just laughing on the inside because, first of all, being from a peanut farm in South Georgia, walking out onto a frozen pond, ice hockey, none of that's in my vocabulary, but it just immediately begs the question, do you still have all your original teeth?
I do. A few got kind of knocked around and loose, so we had to get the braces, Invisalign, all that kind of stuff, get them straightened out, but they're still intact. Yeah.
Well, you're one of the lucky ones then, huh?
Yeah. Thank goodness.
Well, we grew up riding in the back of pickup trucks, riding bikes without helmets, all the stuff that nowadays you almost bubble wrap a kid to send them out. So I know hockey's come a long way in terms of facial protection and probably bubble wrapping kids to put them out there on the rink. But I guess when I think of hockey, I think of really tough people, really tough mindsets. That already starts to just kind of embody the Dan Whalen that I know, man. You're one strong guy.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, there definitely was a lot of those lessons early on, and I was on some pretty competitive teams with coaches that demanded a lot from us at an early age. So and then obviously being in a leadership role on the team, you've got to kind of really elevate yourself. And my parents were always on my butt to be working towards my full potential. So that was ingrained pretty early on, and so there came a time where ultimately hockey was like, all right, we kind of hit the ceiling here. I'm not going to play in the NHL, so I've got to kind of figure out what is my thing, because that for so long that was really it. Again, I didn't have a whole lot of other aspirations, or at least they weren't real clear, and so that's sort of where I looked at some other avenues and ultimately ended up going to school for fitness. So I looked into the gym and stuff, and I was actually a really skinny kid growing up, so I took to the weights to kind of try to again generate some of that confidence that I felt was missing. So I kind of fell in love with the gym and those effects, and so I just like, hey, I don't really know what I'm going to do, so I might as well try to make this a job, and started personal training in college, and so that ended up being about a 7 or 8 year career in the fitness industry across varying roles. So personal training, management, regional management, and eventually tried and failed at entrepreneurship in that realm as well. And that's sort of where I'll get to how College Hunks came about.
So you, at this point though, you have already started to build a skill set of not only leadership, but with your, I guess, bridging into the fitness world, you were running gyms and managing gyms, managing people. So you had already started to slowly bridge into that capacity, I guess.
Yeah, I had my first true management role. I think I was 20 years old, with about 10 employees or something like that. And within the fitness context, I think it got up to, 50, 60 or something like that.
Yeah.
So it was a great, the growth process. I think I really fell in love with that whole start here and get there. And I kind of equate it back to, I really liked to play with Legos when I was a kid. And I liked the process of starting with just all these random pieces and putting them together into something that really works. And that I saw that correlation with leadership and team building, and didn't really realize it at the time.
So how did you wind up in Tampa? What was the path that took you to Tampa and then had you walk in to our world headquarters for College Hunks, which is right there near the stadium in Tampa, Florida?
Yeah. So I had moved around a good bit in my early 20s. In that fitness industry, there was always a carrot, right? There was always another opportunity. And for a young single guy, I was often the guy to put my hand up and say, hey, I'll go there if it means, more opportunity. Maybe not necessarily for the right reasons looking back, but I lived in Tennessee, Georgia, Arizona, back to Tennessee. So I really went around quite a bit, and would be the guy to move often. And ultimately, when that entrepreneurship plan kind of fell and blew up in my face, which I was not ready for at the time. I think I was about 25 or 6. I was like, well, I got to start over somewhere. And so I didn't know what I wanted to do. But I knew that, hey, quality of life, I think is important right now because I'm unclear. I know I'm done with the fitness industry. I need a break. I'm burnt out. And so I was like, well, I like the beach, and it's hard to be upset when you're at the beach. So I moved down to the beach. I rented a beach house. I didn't have a job secured just yet. Again, not the smartest thing in the world. So I took a chance on myself. And it was funny because, the last bit of money that I had saved up for that entrepreneurship journey was dwindling. And I counted it down. I had 45 days to find a job and secure a paycheck before I was screwed. And I really wanted to be with College Hunks, and they put me through 5 or 6 interviews, and I got 3 or 4 offers from other gym companies before. And I was like, I'm going to hold out. I really want to, I want to be with these guys. The values really resonate with me. And on day 42, I got the call.
Get out.
Straight up.
Who called you?
I believe the HR manager at the time.
Wow.
Offered me.
So you're literally down to 3 days left.
It was, again, I don't recommend it, but we were burning the candle at both ends back then for sure.
Well, you were interviewing, I presume, to be the general manager for the corporate-owned Tampa location, the Tampa store. Is that correct?
Yep.
So at that point, the Tampa store is thriving. So I'm sure they wanted to make sure they had the right fit and they got the right person in there to lead it. It's obvious, and looking back using, that great thing called hindsight, they made a great choice. But so you went in there and you became the general manager of the base operation, I guess, for College Hunks. And when I say base operation, so everybody understands, College Hunks is a franchise business, but the founders and the system have what's called corporate stores. So there are about a half a dozen corporate-owned College Hunks locations. Tampa and Washington, D.C., probably Washington's a flagship store, I would say, but Tampa's right there. The two together are really the flagship operations for the College. So this is an important role that Dan has been put into. And who's watching you? Everybody in corporate headquarters and the 2 founders, Nick and Omar, have their eyes on the Tampa prize. And this poor guy's coming in there with 3 days of food left in the pantry to become the general manager. No pressure.
Yeah, I didn't tell anybody that. But yeah, Nick and Omar and everybody and all their friends, because we did, we'd often do jobs for them. But I mean, back then it was really, there were big aspirations, big plans for Tampa that weren't quite being realized just yet. There was a lot of potential there, but they really needed somebody to come in and roll up their sleeves and do the work and start building, the foundation. It had a good bit of success, but really needed to kind of reach that next gear. But this industry, as you know, is not for the timid. You've got to have that grit factor. You've got to have that tenacity. And so I skinned my knee quite a bit. First couple of years, we definitely had our growing pains. We had our struggles. It wasn't all, the business grew, but not necessarily the way that I envisioned. And it took some shifting in me as a leader and some growth in me as the leader to really find that next gear, and to have it be something that would have a legacy and endure over long periods of time and have that success. Because anybody can be successful for a year. To do it over a decade, that's a completely different story.
So always taking aside when I'm doing these interviews, because what you just said caused me a moment of pause. And part of that is to remind people that there's no immediate gratification. So when I would hire sales reps, it was always funny to me for many that within the first year, they'd be having a good rookie season, you know, and they go, hey, when can I get promoted to the next level and the next level and that kind of thing. And my admonition to them always, Dan, was your first year, you're selling against the past. The second year, you're selling against a rookie that had a pretty decent first year, but that third year is a defining moment in the life of a salesperson, because you're now selling against 2 years of your own history, which means you had to reinvent yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You had to find a different way. You couldn't keep doing what you're doing. So I wouldn't even talk to people about promotability or promotions until they had 3 solid years of selling success. So that was part of my interview process. Understand, if you're going to come work for me, this is my expectation. You go grind for 3 years, put up great numbers, and then we'll talk. So how long were you the GM for the Tampa location? How many years?
All in just under 6, so maybe like 5.5 or so.
So I don't know if you want to really throw numbers out there, but in terms of growth from the time you took over till the time you left, that location increased revenue dramatically. What numbers are you comfortable sharing?
It was a 5x growth over that period there, and it had already started out over $1 million in revenue. So you know, that along with and what we really set out to do was not just doing top line revenue, but focused revenue based on the amount of territory that we had, because it wasn't as much as when Tampa was a little bit younger. There were actually more territories that had gotten sold off. So we were really trying to prove the business model that if you attack, you know, deep in your territory and grind it out, and position yourself properly in the market, that you can do a lot with not, you know, it doesn't have to be a ton of patient or territory.
So I guess over the period of those 6 years that you were managing the territory, I know you're a voracious reader as well. What were some of the most, I guess, the biggest lessons or the biggest takeaways you had in that role as you grew in your ability to lead others and, frankly, do great business development?
You know, there's literally tons of books, but I think the most important moment of clarity for me personally was, you know, and I had mentioned, you know, earlier in the interview that I didn't grow up as a very confident kid and wasn't the highest self-esteem. So there was a little bit of fake it till you make it going on in the early 20s.
Sure.
And what I realized was whether you have no confidence and think nothing of yourself, or you're arrogant and you have way too much confidence, either way, it's all about you. And that was not working for me. So we would get these little bursts of success, but when I talked about that sustainability, what allowed that to happen was I had to shift the focus off of me. And I had to understand that this is about everybody else. And this is about me doing what I can do to make everyone around me's work experience the best it possibly can be, the best work environment, and essentially make myself obsolete. Because if I'm not necessary every single day for the business to be successful, then I actually did my job as the leader.
So you're not going to be shocked to hear me say this, but I say that to business owners all the time, that if you're the guy in there doing it, you're making a huge mistake, because you're not only failing to develop the people under you and develop your infrastructure, but if you're not there every day, the business is going to fail because you haven't empowered others to step up and take on the role. So that's part of the building leaders, part of our story. And we see business owners all the time that are, you know, working so hard in the business and not working on it. They're not developing their infrastructure, their people, and doing the things necessary to be able to exhibit exponential growth like you saw in Tampa. So, I mean, let's be a spoiler here because I want to bridge into some other topics. Tell everybody what your role is now, Dan's been promoted as I thought about a year ago, 8 months ago. Tell
Mhm.
everybody what you do now for College Hunks.
So at the beginning of 2021, I started working part-time, for the home office as a franchise business coach, consulting with franchise owners on based on my experience in the College Hunks model, what will lead them to more likely greater success, based on what I had been through. And so now, back in October last year, became the director of franchise business consulting. So overseeing the team of franchise business coaches and really what goes into that type of coaching and that type of interaction, and not just the what, but the how, right? How do you motivate a franchise owner, and how do you help them kind of see what is possible without just trying to force it, or those different types of things like that. So that's been tremendous. It's been a phenomenal challenge. It's helped me continue to grow as a person, and it's been a pleasure, getting to not just work with the coaches, but also with all the franchise owners and their unique experiences as well.
So I know you're not the kind of guy that wants to brag on themselves, so I'm going to do it for you. Dan was the keynote speaker at our annual convention of owners and business leaders, managers, and hunks at our meeting. We call it reunion every year. Dan gave the keynote address and just absolutely killed it. And then on top of that, he never gave up on his fitness deal. So Dan it works out a lot and enters bodybuilding competitions, and he just recently won another bodybuilding competition. So congratulations for that. But Dan is the coach of the coaches. All the coaches that work with franchise partners within College Hunks work with Dan, and Dan is their leader, and he is phenomenal in his role, does a really great job. And the thing I appreciate most about Dan is he is a voracious reader. I enjoy getting on the phone with him or on email or text, and we start talking about books we've read and comparing notes and what was your takeaway and how can we bring this to bear for the brand. But what I want to really get into now, and I know you saw my interview recently with Marcus Givens, you've seen Josh, you're aware of Stephen Boyne and Robert Gordon, who are working with me here in Wilmington, and their stories. I haven't interviewed them yet, but they're coming. Dan also has developed some people within our system. So Dan, our 4 core values: listen, fulfill, and delight, create a fun, enthusiastic team environment, always branding. But we always come back to what I think is a real pillar of our success, which is building leaders. So can you share a couple of building leader stories from Tampa where you're the general manager, and maybe you've got a couple of guys, and I have 2 in mind that come immediately to top of my mind, that came in and they were on a truck and you saw potential?
Yeah. The top story that comes to mind is two brothers, a pair of brothers that we found off the University of Tampa campus in the cafeteria, I think back in 2016 or something like that. Very uninspiring, loose side table with 4 legs, and I don't even know if we had a branded tablecloth at that point. But these guys, needed some coins, some spare walking around money. Don't think that this was something that they saw themselves doing for more than a couple of months, maybe for the summer. And 5-6 years later, these young men are respectively the now GM of the Tampa moving office for corporate, and the other is a franchise business consultant with me on my team. And incredible, absolutely incredible, what they've been able to do, and watch them grow and become, polished and just sounding like just seasoned pros that have been doing this for 20 years at times. Just blows me away how proud I am. There's another set of brothers that's kind of the same thing. One's another business coach for me. The other is, I think he's director of operations or second in command over there with the Tampa office as well. A few others that are, kind of all in various roles. And so that to me, above all the accolades and the plaques and the trophies that we've gotten and the lists of national recognition, making a difference with those young people has been by far the most rewarding aspect. And that's what I do love about leadership, is because, back back when I was that age, I didn't know what was going on. And I wish I had somebody to just be that transparent with me and just say, hey, it's going to be okay. But here's what you want to do, right? Stop pretending to do this and let's just focus on this. And I promise you, it's going to be all right. And to have that real talk.
I know you haven't had the joy of raising kids yet, but I think every parent that's got an older kid remembers the day that their kid determined they were smarter than the parent. Usually starts in the 13, somewhere in there. By the time they're 16, you're just a complete moron and you don't know diddly about anything. And then at some point, when you get into your 30s, you realize how smart your parents really are. Yeah. And how much they actually taught you. So part of what I share with leaders, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about this, is you never know. In your day-to-day grind, when you're going in there and you're talking to young men, young women in your businesses, and you're trying to have an impact on them, and you think, well, there's a couple of knuckleheads that I'm just not getting through to them. Somewhere down the road, one of those knuckleheads may wake up and smell the coffee, and they heard you. They didn't listen, they heard you, and then they call you. Have you had one of those experiences yet with a former employee that said, hey, Dan, you changed my life, or thanks for trying, or you made a difference?
Oh, I mean, I purposely have my texts on my work phone to not delete. So I have them set to save forever because there are dozens and dozens of those messages from either current or former employees, or whether it's emails. And again, it's not me doing that, but it's just that space was created for them to see for themselves what is possible for them, which is not an easy thing, but oftentimes it's not really about driving something home with somebody. It's just finding what's in the way of them seeing they need to see and moving it out of the way for them. And so that's definitely a key component.
It's very true. I wish I had $1 for every time I said to somebody, you need to get out of your own way. You're hindering your own progress. You're overthinking this, or you need to really get into the grind and the understanding. So just a personal story. I had a sales rep when I was in pharmaceuticals literally meet me one morning at a coffee shop. And I'm his district manager, so I'm his boss. He came in and he sat down. He goes, hey, I need to talk to you a minute. He said, I hate my job. Mm-hmm. I'm like, wow, you hate your job? He said, yeah, I need to leave the industry, but I need about 4 weeks to finish, the path I'm heading. Will you support me through that? And I said, yeah, but understand there's no turning back on this now that you've told me you hate your job and you don't want to do it anymore. So I need you to go ahead and write a letter of resignation, pick your date, sign it. And it's all good. Thanks for coming with integrity and telling me this, because most people, due to the golden handcuffs or just having the money, they'd continue to fake it. And they'd fake it and fake it and fake it until you wound up having to put them on some kind of performance plan, because the performance is going to go down if you hate your job. So I got a message the other day from that guy, and he's been seeing these videos, Dan. And he goes, man, I've been watching you for years, Papa Honk, building leaders, all that. He said, it's time for me not to be silent. This is who you are. This is who you've been. I've known you. This is what you do. For me, that was one of the most gratifying, messages that anybody could get. So I would just say to people watching this, reach out and touch people that helped you progress, helped you in your career, because you have no idea what they're going through right now. And your message to them of thanks could make their day. Mm-hmm. Secondly, as a leader, don't ever get down on the fact that if you're letting your light shine appropriately, people are seeing it. I call it tip of the spear mentality, lead from the front, care about others more than yourself, all those sorts of just basic human qualities. When you're bringing that to bear every day, people are seeing it. They may not say anything, but sooner or later happens. Now, I can tell you, the guys you're talking about that you mentored in Tampa, I've seen their body of work. Mm-hmm. You did a good job, sir. You are doing a great job with your coaches. You're leading from the front. Frankly, inspire people. And I want your story to serve as inspiration for others, that when you think you are running out of smack, you're down to your last 3 days of food in the cupboard, Hang on. Keep your fork. Something good's coming. Dan, have you got any parting thoughts on college hunks? And I mean, what would you tell a parent that their college kid or their high school kid is looking for a job? This is a good place to go.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about what we're trying to do here is obviously provide an exemplary service to the community and take care of people during their most, one of their most stressful times. But in the process, really that why is we can take in, team members and make sure that they leave better than when they arrive. And kind of going back to what you said about you don't know what you don't know, the mentality that we want to have is that generous mindset is, hey, I know this is the right thing to say, and my intuition says they're not going to get it and I just need to just be harsh. But you hold back on that and you think highly enough of the person to go ahead and say what you need to say anyway. And hey, it may turn out, it might not, but I tell you what, on the time where they actually get it, they come back into the shop yesterday, the day after, and they're like, hey, you know what you said yesterday, that really hit home, and I'm sorry for reacting the way that I did. There's one of those for every single time that it doesn't work out, and it's worth it to stay true to your whatever your path is, because people follow you for who you are, not what you do. And ultimately that's the culture that we're trying to build here.
I think it is, and as we always go back to, I mean, our mission statement is simple: we're here to move your world, and that not only means our clients, it means our hunks. I mean, the folks that work with our team down in Tampa at headquarters. And I said the other day, and I'm just going to throw this litmus test out there. This doesn't stop with me. This is a fundamental expectation of all of our nearly 200 locations across the United States and our 2 locations up in Canada. If you're moving or if you need something removed from your home, an unwanted item, call us, work with us, because we're doing more than just coming to move you. We're coming to move your world. So for Leadership 101, Dan, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope everyone enjoys this interview. Dan Whalen, College Hunks, hauling junk and moving. Leadership 101, I'm Jeff Moss. Have a great day.